Hello, and welcome to the first module of Castle Quest. I'm so happy to have you here. Today's module is going to start with a very warm welcome and some housekeeping to let you know about Castle Quest. And to start with, I want to talk a little bit about who I am. So my whole life has been a preparation for this project. And I'm going to begin by reviewing the qualifications and experiences that I bring to this work. I'm hoping this will help you trust me enough to go with the flow as I take you through some unusual and sometimes uncomfortable places. I have over a decade of university studies in this area, from the English honours degree, which helped me polish my imagination and critical thinking, to honours in law, which gave me a solid background in assessing risk environments. And I've since gone on to create continuing professional development courses at a master's level on risk management for the College of Law. As a legal practitioner, I've specialised in contracts, intellectual property, and the needs of small business, including talking many clients down from the ledge of anxiety and helping them find the space they needed so they could make conscious choices about the action they needed to take. My master's in law, majoring in alternative dispute resolution, showed me how to look for the win-win solution in every situation. How not to generate options for others and impose my ideas on them, but instead to gently encourage them to seek out realistic answers that work for them. My training as a family dispute resolution practitioner brought home to me that empowering people who are trapped in a threat environment can lead to amazing transformations, and that even the biggest threats have a silver lining of opportunity if you can consider them calmly. It also showed me that a pile of little risks can be just as energy draining as one big massive one. My life as a homeschooling and unschooling parent has taught me how to question traditional techniques and given me the courage to reinvent them to suit my vision and values. And my work as a researcher has made me proficient at quickly finding information that I don't know. Finally, my journey as an awakening entrepreneur has given me the passion and determination to find and fulfill the divine purpose for which I was given this great gift of an earthly existence. And part of that is helping you to achieve your divine purpose too. So my intentions in creating Castle Quest is for it to be a place of co-creation where we're doing the work together and all learning as we go. Not me as a guru on a pedestal handing down all the answers. I'm very happy to share my knowledge and experience with you, but I do want to make it very clear that I'm here playing in the rumbling with the vulnerability as much as you are. I want it to be the program to be very holistic, looking at every aspect of business and life as a business owner. Because when we are sole traders or sole practitioners or small companies, every aspect of our life and our business are interconnected. They feed off each other and they impact each other. It's impossible to actually separate them. So it's important that we have the opportunity to consider these kinds of risks holistically. I want us to take an approach based in love and curiosity rather than fear and avoidance. And I desperately want this program to be anything but boring. Using the language of fantasy and poetic imagery, which you'll find me doing a lot, I use a lot of metaphors, I use a lot of visual imagery, because it removes the threat from topics that can otherwise be highly sensitive and difficult to discuss. Metaphor is proven to be an extremely powerful method for accessing your inner wisdom and for transforming complex concepts into common sense that stay in your mind. In this process, we are actively calming your business nervous system, improving your decision-making skills, and preparing you to build your business to its full potential. So let's talk a little bit about the tools and processes that I use. I'll provide the resources for you in my emails and on in the content portal, the course platform on the content portal, and they're for you to print and save. And it's important that you have somewhere to keep them. So I have a directory in my Carefree Counsel file on my computer, which is just me, Castle Quest. And I also have this little folder where I store the paperwork things that I've done each year. And it's important to have this so you can look back from year to year and build on what's gone before, because this course isn't one and done. It's an evolution. No business, however big or however old it is without risk. So you'll be returning to this work and you get lifetime access. So every year when I run it, you're welcome to come back and do the work again. So it's important to have a home for this work where you can find it, even if you haven't looked at it for a number of months or even a year. We're going to be doing lots of brainstorming, mind mapping, and thought dumping. So it's always good to have paper and pens available. And if you're doing the journaling, you might want to have a specific place where you can write down your journals, or you can use the content portal to write your answers there. I actually like to use my little Castle Quest book, which was the gift that I gave out last year, so in 2022. So every year at the end of the Castle Quest, I send out a little gift for you all to help you use the to celebrate having done this work. One of the years before, it was little holographic dragon magnets, which I've got in my Castle Quest folder holding my pieces of work together. So yeah, feel free to share any ideas you have throughout the program for making things better. Many of the resources we will use, such as the Risk Hotspot checklist and the succession planning document, came from participants telling me what they wanted me to create for them. So I'm a generator in human design, and I work best when you give me that spark of inspiration to run with. So do not be hesitant to let me know if you see something that's missing, or something that can be done better, or something that you would like to enhance your experience of this work. All right, set up. Emails and calls. So the calls and the structure of the program was all set out in the email I sent yesterday. But as a quick run through, on Wednesdays, I send out an email summarising the next module and what you'll need to prepare. On Thursdays, we have our 2-hour module calls, and they will be 1 a week for the next 12 weeks. On Fridays, I send out an email with the recording of the theory part of the call. I will record the discussion working part of the call, but this is only for my own record keeping, and it's for professional responsibility reasons, in case I ever need to go back and review what I've said. As clearly stated in the Castle Quest participation agreement, this course is not a legal service, it's mentoring, and I'm only providing information and mentoring or coaching, not legal advice. But when you're a solicitor, those lines unavoidably become a bit blurry. And I've seen enough conflict situations devolve into a game of I said, you said. So it helps my anxiety to know that if we ever need to, we can both prove exactly what was said. And that's a perfect example of how we manage risk here in Castle Quest. Identifying a potential problem that causes us to want to hold back or play small, and take proactive steps to reduce the harm it could cause, so that we don't need to be afraid of it anymore. If we're discussing something during that part of the call that you would like to have a record of, so for example, something you want to remember when we're talking about a particular risk or brainstorming ideas for you, you're always welcome to ask for permission to record. And if everyone else on the call agrees, I'm happy to make that permission available to you. We have the Facebook group, which remains open all year. And we return to that in Beyond Castle Quest, which is the check-in calls that we have for the other 3 quarters when Castle Quest isn't actively online. And you're welcome to add dragon stories or inspiration at any time, to ask questions, share responses and seek feedback, and to post your mitigation reports, which is the problem you're trying to deal with, the consequences of ignoring it, and the action to take. And we'll deal with that more in one of the later modules. And I'll just share my screen and show you the Facebook group to start with. So here's the Facebook group, Castle Quest. You've been provided with the link to that. One of the beautiful things about Castle Quest, and each module will have its own post, and any comments or things you want to share in relation to that module, feel free to share in the comments underneath it. And if you look back, you'll see there's quite the archive from the last 5 years. This is Alice sharing some of the gifts that I've sent out, Castle Quest gifts I've sent out in the past. So an origami dragon, magnifying glass with a dragon on the thing. There's a little sun catcher with a dragon wrapped around it. This was a Viking infinity dragon pin to remind us that our dragons never go away, and mine's actually pinned on my little doll that sits on my desk. Yeah, so that's our little Castle Quest altar. And yeah, if you scroll down, you'll be able to see things that we've shared, and you'll be able to see these mitigation reports, which, as we talked about, is naming the dragon, the problem, the consequences, and the action. And looking at that can give you some understanding of how the kinds of risks and the problems we approach, or that have been approached in Castle Quest in the past. And the thing to remember is that there's no one size fits all. There's no one solid list of risks that we're going to be dealing with, because the risks that we uncover and the risks that you'll want to deal with are going to be unique to you. So another place you can find some of the risks that we'll be looking at is here on my website. So this is carefreecounsel.com, and if you go to Castle Quest and go to the sales page, you'll be able to see there's a list of lists of things that we've dealt with in the past and the philosophy behind Castle Quest. You know, that some of the 3 levels of risk, so the limiting belief dragons, the urgent dragon action ones that need us to do something and need us to do it now, and the less urgent but still threatening dragons that that we can't do anything about right now, but we need to watch over a long term. And it also, if you scroll down, you'll also see the different modules that we'll be doing. So in week 1, that's this week, we do the Introduction to Mission Possible. In Stand Tall Superhero, we connect with our values and vision, and we design a map that sets out what we want to, what our business does for us. In module 1, we look at our mission statement and the why we're doing this work. In module 2, week 2, Stand Tall Superhero, we connect with our values and vision and what our business is doing for us. So we look at first at in week 1, what our business is doing for the world. In week 2, what our business is doing for us, how it's keeping us safe, and what we're committing to in being active in it. In week 3, we look at the risk hotspot map, and we start to look at the wider network of risks in which our business operates. So we step back from the nitty-gritty day-to-day problems that we deal with every day, and we take instead of looking at those trees, we look at the forest in which the entire environment in which our business operates, and we start widening our awareness of the risks that we're exposed to. In week 4, we name our dragons. So we do this massive brain dump where we get everything that worries us down on paper, and we start clearing those dragons out of our subconscious and getting them out into into the world, out of our head, down on paper, where we can start to sort them and think about what they need from us. In week 5, the mystery of the matrix, we start to map our risks that we've identified on this little model, which sorts them into legal, financial, technical, logistical, relational, personal, and spiritual. So we look at which areas of our life are under the most pressure, which need us to, where we need to really focus our attention. Week 6 is an integration week where you can catch up on all of this foundational elements and get comfortable with the theory that we've done so far and really let the learning sink in before we move into the real work of taking action on the dragons. Week 7 is our Victorious Visionary Week, where we have a meditation that helps us begin that process of sorting danger from limiting beliefs. And it's got a beautiful sound bath built into the meditation. And it helps us begin that work on an energetic level to really clear out what are the stories that we're telling ourselves about why we're not safe? What are the anxieties we're carrying with us that we don't actually need because they can't actually hurt us? And so it's time to let those go. And we do that clearing work so that what we're left with are only the dragons that actually need us to do something about them because they have real world consequences. In week 8, we start to take action on those dragons that need, those risks that need something for us right now, that have the most imminent consequences, the things that have the potential to harm us and that need us to take that urgent dragon action right now. And we make those plans for mitigating those consequences and getting that work done. And then in week 9, we have a whole week which is just strategic mitigation action. So all of those things you identified in week 8 that you were going to do, in week 9, you've got 2 hours with nothing to do but just get them done so that you can actually make progress during the call and there's no excuses. In week 10, we take everything we've learned and we start using that to fill in a risk register, which is an ongoing document that we can use from year to year to keep track of those long-term dragons that we can't actually do anything about right now, but which need to stay in our awareness and need to have a home in our castle so that we can not be ignoring them and suppressing them, so we can know, okay, I know where you are, I know what you need, and I've got a system for checking in with you regularly. In week 11, we take that step to going from damsel in distress to dragon tamer. So we begin to really put in place the systems and processes and the little improvements to our business, which will allow us to leave a legacy. So setting our business up for a smooth transition in case we're ever not able to be active in it. And whether we need that tomorrow because we have an accident or in decades and decades from now, every time we put some of these steps in place, we improve the safety, security, and sustainability of our business, and we decrease its stress levels. And then finally, in week 12, celebrating our happily ever after ending with our crown and glory, we create our CEO manifesto, where we really sink into who we are as a business owner. So we started looking at why we want this business and what this business does for us and for the world. And we end by looking at who we need to be to bring that whole vision to fruition. And we wrap everything up in that place. So that's the overview. If you're trying to access the Castle Quest portal, up here we've got the content portal. And it may ask you to log in. So there's Castle Quest here. And yep, it needs me to log in. There we go. And that gives us access to the portal. In the portal, you'll find here the program overview, which has all of the things that I just explained about the different modules. Little summary. And then for each of the missions, we have the focus, what we're going to be doing in that mission, how to prepare for it, what you need to get in place, a summary of the theory we'll be discussing, and then often there's some inspiration. So, for example, this is one of my past mission statements that you can use as a starting off point. And it's also got the reflection questions, which we'll do in our 30-minute journaling sessions on Tuesday. Those sessions are optional. You can just work through these journaling questions on your own. But past participants have found it really, really helpful to come along for that 30 minutes and just put 30 minutes aside on a Tuesday to really integrate the learning and reflect on the learning from that week's theory and how it relates to you specifically before we move on to the next space. And then there's the resource section. So there's the transcript from this call, which is there as a PDF. And for mission 1, there's our program agreement, which I know you will all have read and accepted as a part of participating in the call. And so that's the same for every module. There's the same structure, and this structure will also be in the emails that are sent out on the Wednesday before each call. Cool. So if you have any questions about any of that, feel free to ask at any time, either by email or in the Facebook group or on one of the calls. And so if you need to cancel your attendance to any of the calls, because Acuity, to make it easier for you, rather than forcing you to book into all 12 module calls and all 12 journaling calls individually, I've set it up so that booking in with Acuity, it books you into all 12 calls. Unfortunately, if you use the Acuity link in the booking reminder to cancel any of the calls, because you can't attend on that day, it will cancel all of the calls and take them all out of your calendar. So don't use that link. If you can't attend one of the calls, just send me an email or a Facebook message so we know not to wait for you before we begin, because otherwise I'll try and chase you up and send you a little nudge so that you remember that we're starting if I think you're intending to come along, and we'll wait for you to come in. So we usually wait for about 5-10 minutes and then I'll launch into the theory so that we don't waste our time. You're welcome to drop in or drop out if you can't attend for the whole call. That's fine. We're very happy to be flexible. Just try and minimize the disruption to others by making sure that your microphone is muted as soon as you come in. Having videos on is personal preference. It's entirely up to you. So any problems, please talk to me. I am very, very open to feedback and making things better, because I want this to be a really, really useful, fulfilling, and wonderful experience for you so that you do come back year after year. Okay, that's the housekeeping done. Let's move on to the theory for today. So what is risk and good governance? What's risk and why is it important? So risk is any area of uncertainty in your business. And while some uncertainty can be exciting, too much can drain our energy and leave us in overwhelm as we try to cope with a situation that feels completely beyond our control. Risk becomes a problem when it carries the potential to harm you, harm your business, harm your finances, harm your reputation, harm those you work with, harm your family, harm you personally, if it's not acted on or prepared for. Now, uncertainty can be strategic, how and why you do things in the way that you do them, or it may be operational, what you actually do or don't do from moment to moment. Identifying, analysing, and taking action on your risks is a proactive thing to do. It gives you the time and the space to respond to the risk calmly and consciously, instead of panicking in a reactive way when the risk turns into a crisis. It shifts that uncertainty out of your head, making more room for peace of mind. And it stops little monkey mind chirping, oh, where to go, oh, where to go, oh, where to go, we're in danger. And it helps big mind answer, it's okay, I love you, We're safe. Be still. Now, not all risk is negative. Positive uncertainty can also cause problems. And everyone has their own risk tolerance. You might be open and flexible about risk. You might be cautious and prefer to minimize your risk, or you might be completely risk averse and prefer to avoid risk at all cost. So one of the things to think about is how you make your business decisions. Do you use intuition? Do you make decisions based on gut feelings? Do you use experience? Do you research? These are all valid and useful, but for effective decision-making that promotes your long-term business success, you also need to include a knowledge of your appetite for risk. That is, whether the opportunity you are making a decision about offers you a level of reward that is commensurate with the risk involved, and whether those risks are of a type that you are willing to accept. Risk is an inevitable part of being in business, but thriving businesses know that they need to consciously cap their exposure to an acceptable level. And one of the things I encourage people to think about when they're decision-making is the 3 factors of competency, capacity, and care. So when you're faced with a new opportunity, it's important to consider whether you have the competence to take it on, the qualifications, knowledge, and skills, whether you have the capacity, because if you don't have the knowledge and skills to take advantage of that opportunity, then you're either going to have to put in extra effort to upskill, so you're going to need to have more capacity, or you're looking at a negligence action waiting to happen because you're almost bound to make a mistake because you're operating way outside the zone of your competence, and that's a dangerous place to be. Capacity, whether you have the time and energy and emotional bandwidth to take on the opportunity, because if you don't, if you take on tasks that you don't have the capacity for, or opportunities that you don't have the capacity for, then you are facing burnout. And you're likely to get exhausted very, very quickly and drain all of your resources so that you can't give time to other things. And that actually lowers your competence because you're not operating at your best. And finally, care. Do you actually care enough about this opportunity to give yourself wholeheartedly to it? Because if you take on opportunities that you don't wholeheartedly care about, that you don't actually want to do, that leads to resentment. And the more you force yourself to do things that you resent, the more you lead yourself back into burnout territory. So taking the time to clearly articulate your appetite for risk and considering those 3 factors of competence, capacity, and care can directly guide and inform your strategic planning and budgeting. And this leads to greater consistency in decision-making and less uncertainty and anxiety overall. You also need to watch for any disparity between your risk appetite and your actual conduct. So for example, say you know you're very risk averse, but you end up saying yes to things that you don't actually want to do due to peer pressure, or that you don't have the capacity or competence for due to peer pressure or people pleasing, or just because you're being guided by other people's expectations rather than being true to your own risk appetite. That can also be something that leads you into danger. So we'll talk more about risk appetite in later modules, but in a nutshell, your risk appetite is how comfortable you are stepping outside your comfort zone. And some people are happy to fly naked and others need a full suit of armor. And there's nothing wrong with being at either end of that scale, but you need to know where you are comfortable, because the more exposed and vulnerable you feel, because you've overloaded your tolerance for uncertainty, the more likely you are to self-sabotage. And then you'll need to adjust your behavior or put safety measures in place so you don't end up in a constant state of fawn, fight, flight, or freeze. So what is self-sabotage? The number one issue I hear from new clients is they don't know what they don't know. When we don't have faith in our decision-making competence, we tend to shut down, to pull back. That is, if you don't feel safe, your subconscious will sabotage you to keep you small. The subconscious is a marvelous protector. Rather than allowing us to face uncertainty, anxiety, risk, and embarrassment, it tries to keep us safe by sabotaging what our conscious brain thinks we want to do. After all, it thinks it's dangerous to get too successful. You never know what could happen next. It's a place of rampant uncertainty. So if you find yourself constantly trampling your own boundaries and behaving in ways you can't explain, perhaps it's not laziness or procrastination or whatever. It's just your subconscious trying to keep you safe. So then what is good governance? Good governance is serious self-care for your business and for you. When we suppress our worries, they don't go away. The pressure just builds and builds in our subconscious. So I like to think of our business as a castle, and our subconscious is the caves under that castle. And the risks and the worries and the anxieties are dragons. And when we don't want to deal with them, we shove them into the cave, right? The more dragons we shove into the cave, the more of a roiling mess of potential problems we have going on there. And that pressure builds and builds and builds until eventually it explodes. Taking ownership of risk lifts us to the energetic space of higher consciousness and intuition. It helps us inhabit our castle and clear those caves. So I like to use the hand model of the brain, which was brought to us by Dan Siegel, and you can find him on YouTube if you're interested in finding out more. And he talks about decisions coming from a place of wise enlightenment or from primitive fear. So if I hold up my hand and we imagine my forearm here is the brainstem, my thumb represents our dinosaur brain, the amygdala, the limbic brain system, the primitive brain. And this is what controls your fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. It's also where all of your big emotions originate, your anger, your anxiety, and your fear. When we wrap our fingers over our thumb, this represents your prefrontal cortex, your wise leader brain, the brain that can access wisdom, intuition, your values and vision, and that connects you to the whole stream of universal consciousness and supports you in making decisions for the highest good of all. So what does this model tell us about risk management? When you're facing perceived risks, worries, and fears, you have a choice. You can deal with them using your wise leader brain, your conscious thinking connected brain, or you can suppress them, ignore them, and shove them down into your subconscious. When you make a habit of doing this, those uncertainties, worries, and fears that you keep shoving and shoving in can build up to the point where your subconscious can't bear the pressure anymore. So it tries to rescue you from them. The only problem is your subconscious's idea of rescue is going to be fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. It's going to scream at you that you're not safe and try to get you out of that situation in whatever way it can. And that far too often looks like sabotage to your conscious brain. The other alternative is that you end up ignoring a real-world danger that actually needs you to take urgent action until the thing you're scared of actually goes wrong. And when it does, it's more than likely that will trigger you into a panic reaction. And when you're triggered, that's when you flip your lid. When you're triggered, you go out of your window of tolerance and into a traumatized state. So your window of tolerance is the state of mind where you can make calm, conscious, proactive decisions. Above this window, you have a state of hyperarousal. That's when you go into meltdown, throwing a tantrum, screaming, crying, fighting, yelling. You're not thinking, You're just reacting. You're having a major rant. Underneath the window of tolerance, you have a state of hypoarousal. And that's where you freeze, where you shut down, deer in the headlights, shrink into yourself, curl up smaller and smaller, hide and hope it just all goes away. You cannot act in the state of hypoarousal. It all comes back to decision making. So if you don't address your perceived risks from that calm, conscious zone of deliberation, your window of tolerance, you end up flipping your lid and your limbic system, your subconscious, ends up making the decisions for you from either hyperarousal or hypoarousal. And the kinds of decisions your subconscious makes are based on the information, opinions, and emotions programmed by your early childhood experiences. And this is really not the best brain to be making high-level decisions for your business. Your subconscious also cannot tell the difference between imagination and reality. It reacts to the emotions, to the anxiety. As a result, it needs to know that you have got this. It needs to feel safely protected. Your business will not thrive if your subconscious is constantly in protective mode, because it will be constantly trying to keep your business small to limit your exposure to danger, to limit your vulnerability. And as a result, you will not be able to promote your business to its full potential. You'll find yourself constantly procrastinating, missing opportunities, failing to follow up on leads, all because your subconscious programming is running the show. You need to use your wise leader brain when you're setting up your systems and processes and putting in place the protections that your limbic brain needs to feel safe so that it's not so easily triggered. If you can create that sense of security, when perceived risks arise, your prefrontal cortex can stay engaged, can see the opportunities involved, instead of immediately flipping into the triggered state that sees everything as a threat. Now, one little trick that helps you stay in the prefrontal cortex zone, not getting triggered when anxiety starts to rise, is to do something totally illogical and playful and joyful to help shift your responses back into your zone of tolerance. You can laugh at yourself. You can laugh at someone else. You can watch a kitten video. You can imagine a worst case scenario and then take it to the ultimate extreme. You can talk about, oh, there's that dragon biting me on the butt again. So talking about dragons helps us shift whatever the problem we're dealing with into a level of imaginative ridiculousness, right? It helps us cartoonize the problem, bring it into a fantasy realm where it's something we can deal with rather than being that threat which sends us into a triggered state. It re-engages our imaginative, calm, conscious thinking brain. Another way to help if you're in that triggered state is to create a calm environment that reminds you you're safe. So as soon as you start to flutter into flipping your lid, look around at the things that help you to feel grounded and centered. So for me, I have this little Monet-like painting that I commissioned for my birthday from Meredith Mallon a few years ago. I've got some of my favorite crystals in my peaceful lion at a waterhole bowl. I have a fidget spinner that makes me happy with its little angel wings. I have a spinning top with bluebirds of happiness on it. And I quite often will have that spinning on my desk in front of me while I'm talking to someone. So you can't tell I'm spinning right now, but that helps me just stay centered and grounded. I also have my card of the day on display. So I really like Gabrielle Bernstein's Super Attractor cards for this purpose. And I quite often reach for these resources if I'm feeling at all anxious or tense during the day, because they help me settle back down into my conscious thinking space rather than my triggered emotional space. Scent can also help. I've got a little rollerball with myrrh in it there that I like to also use as a reminder that I'm safe. EFT, tapping, Ho'oponopono, and sunshine are other tools that I use daily to clear that buildup of stress and release the pressure on my subconscious, and to remind myself that I'm safe and to keep that wise leader brain in the driver's seat. The ability to observe your dragons, your stories, your risks, your anxieties objectively without letting them trigger you takes time to develop. But the more you do this work, the easier it becomes. And this brings us further into the concept of good governance for your business. Commitment to good governance is the difference between amateur and professional. So governance is most simply the process of making and implementing decisions. Good governance is having thoughtful, conscious processes and systems that guide your decision-making. Because the more faith we have in our decision-making competence, the more courageous we are in making those decisions. So can you feel the difference in energy between those two? That trapped, anxious, heavy feeling of doubt around whether you are competent enough to make particular decisions, and that vibrant, expansive, aligned, wise brain thinking that's connected to universal abundance and that allows you to make courageous leaps outside your comfort zone while still staying within your zone of risk tolerance. Part of the transformational understanding that I'm going to challenge you to accept in Castle Quest is that there is no risk. There's only our thinking about risk. And when we take radical responsibility for our thoughts, we then begin to transform our relationship of risk entirely from that threat into that opportunity thinking, where everything that happens is simply an opportunity for us to improve our best practice, no matter how scary or dangerous it feels. Now, it's a truism that lack of effective risk management is a major cause of failure for small businesses. And that's why this work is important. Particularly since it's not just the boring red tape kinds of risk management that you might think of, where you're looking at worst case scenarios and determining what can do wrong. It's that whole management of decision making and learning to trust your ability to make decisions, to transform threats into opportunities, and to keep those caves of your subconscious clear. It's shadow work for your business. And that's why it's so important. So today, what are we doing today? Today, we are writing our mission statement. And your mission statement is the why that makes you cry. It goes one step further than an elevator pitch. Now, an elevator pitch is that short intro you give people to tell them what you do. So I'm a lawyer and mediator, and I work with businesses that don't fit into boxes. I provide them with contracts, intellectual property, and to some extent, I help them navigate conflict with compassion. So your mission statement, on the other hand, reminds you why you do what you do. So for me, it's about keeping all of you safe so that you can go on and change the world with your magnificent plans and visions for transformation. So it's an acknowledgement of the unique value that you provide for your service, what makes you passionate about the purpose of your business. So your mission statement needs to surprise you as well as others. Dig below, deep below the mundane surface of what you do into why. Your mission statement needs to inspire. So don't play small. Reach for the stars. Your mission statement is transformative. So don't let it be constrained by your reality and where you are currently. Think about where you're going. It lists your goals for success. So let yourself be crazy. This is a safe place to admit to those brave, audacious, and bold business dreams. Let yourself think big and forget your doubts about what's possible and open yourself to your limitless potential. And focus on the ultimate destination without worrying about the steps you need to take you to get there. Just let yourself see the vision for where you're going. Now, why are we spending the whole first module on a risk management course talking about our mission? Why? And it's because it grounds you in your purpose. It gives you a point of reference. So it's the starting point of setting up hand in hand with your business philosophy, but also beginning to step you out of your safety zone so you can see the wider risk tolerance. And as you step outside that safety zone, it anchors you into your integrity, which is the touchstone that keeps you on track so you don't get lost. Your mission is also the engine that will drive your business from the present to the future, even when you can't see the way. Now, if it feels ho-hum, if it's a little bit boring, a little bit dull, a little bit vanilla, you're not there yet. I really want you to tune into your biggest, most beautiful, most brilliant intentions. What is really, truly, deeply important to you as a business owner? How are you making the world a better place in a way that only you can? When you check into that is what is going to convince you that it's worth dealing with the dragons. It's worth clearing out those caves. Yeah? So now I've told you all about me and what we're doing here. I'm going to open up for discussion so you can tell us who you are and how you are changing the world.